that her father lunged at him, leading Tom to retreat to a bedroom. Tom alleges in a declaration, "While I was barricaded inside the spare room, Mr. Robinson followed me, threatened me, and punched a large hole approximately 12 by 12 inches in the spare bedroom door where I had taken shelter. He then put his face in the hole in the door and smiled, telling me he will me up, destroy me, and called me a mother." The Bravo star alleges Victoria then entered the room and hit my face and temple area towards my hairline, which I captured on video.
He was bleeding from his ear. His vision went blurry. He was barricaded inside a bedroom while a grown man punched a hole through the door and smiled at him through it. And nobody, not one major outlet, led with that image. Not one. They buried it in paragraph 4, sandwiched between music cues and neutral language designed to make you feel like this was just another celebrity spat. But you already know that's not what this is. You already sensed it. That's why you're here. Tom Sandoval just broke his silence. And what's inside those court documents is not what the headlines are telling you. Let's start where it actually started. June 3rd, 2026. Tom and Victoria Lee Robinson come home from a night out at a local bar in Los Angeles. They live together, along with Victoria's father, J. Will Robinson. A verbal argument breaks out. And here's where things stop being a domestic dispute and become something else entirely. Tom notices Victoria filming him on her phone during the argument. He confronts her about it. And that's when her father lunges at him. Not Victoria first, her father. Think about that for a second. Just sit with it. A grown man living in a home that Tom was also living in physically charges at Tom the moment Tom questions what's being recorded. Tom retreats. He runs to a spare bedroom and barricades himself inside. He's not fighting back. He's not escalating. He's running from his own home. And the father follows him. According to the court documents, Tom filed real legal documents obtained by E! News with Tom's name signed to them. J. Will Robinson followed Tom to that barricaded bedroom door and punched a hole in it, not a small hole, approximately 12 by 12 inches, a foot wide. Then he put his face into that hole and looked at Tom, and smiled, and told him he would mess him up, that he would destroy him, called him a vulgar name directly to his face through a hole in a door Tom had locked himself behind trying to stay safe. "I need you to stay with me here, because this is the part that matters. That is not a lover's quarrel. That's not reality TV drama. That is a man being cornered and threatened in what should have been his own safe space." And while he was still trapped in that room, still processing that threat, Victoria walked in, and she hit him in the face, near the temple toward the hairline, hard enough that his vision blurred, hard enough that he bled from his ear. From his neck, he sustained a bruise near his temple and eyebrow ridge, and he says he captured it on video. He has the footage. She was arrested that same night, June 3rd. Corporal injury to a spouse or cohabitant. That's the charge on the police report. $50,000 bail. And here's the part that genuinely made me stop when I read it. Tom helped pay it. He writes in his own declaration that he, foolishly, helped her family with the bond, his word. Foolishly. A man who'd just been hit hard enough to bleed from his ear helped post bail for the woman who did it. And her father who punched through the door. Because he still believed, or maybe just hoped, that things would get better. They didn't get better. Since that night, Tom has been homeless. Effectively, he's been bouncing between hotels and friends' couches because he can't go back to the house. Every time he's tried to retrieve his own belongings, his own things, from the home he shared with Victoria and her dad, he says he's been met with intimidation and threats. Not once, multiple times. He's documented it. It's in the filing. The same pattern of behavior that escalated to physical violence on June 3rd apparently didn't stop after the arrest. It kept going. And look, I want to pause here for a second. Actually, I need to pause here. Because this is the moment in the story where I usually speed up and push to the next revelation. But I don't want to do that right now. Because this part of what Tom described, the being homeless, the hotel rooms, the not being able to get your own stuff, that's not glamorous. That's not dramatic. That's just lonely and frightening. And the kind of thing that happens to people who are being controlled and don't fully realize it yet. I've seen this pattern before. You probably have too. And it doesn't matter how famous you are or how much money you've made or what show you've been on. Fear doesn't check your IMDb page before it shows up. Now here's where it gets interesting, because June 3rd wasn't the beginning. In his restraining order filing, Tom also described an incident on May 14th, weeks before the night with the blurred vision and the bleeding and the broken door. On May 14th, Victoria allegedly struck him in the face during an argument too. So this wasn't a one-time explosion. This was a pattern. And Tom says in his own words that he initially hoped the behavior would subside, that he tried to maintain peace, that he kept hoping things would improve. That is not the behavior of someone looking for attention or trying to weaponize a legal system. That is the behavior of someone who stayed too long and then finally decided they couldn't stay anymore. But the physical altercations aren't even the most calculated part of what Tom describes. The tracking is. Victoria allegedly placed an Apple AirTag inside Tom's car, hidden, without his knowledge or consent. She was tracking his movements, where he went, when he left, when he came back. And that's not all. Tom also accuses her of hacking into his phone and his social media accounts, his private accounts, his private messages, his private life. Think about what kind of mindset drives that behavior. Think about what you need to believe about someone, what level of possession or control you need to feel over them to track their car and break into their phone. That's not jealousy. That is surveillance. And the fact that it was paired with physical violence makes the picture Tom is painting in these documents deeply troubling. He writes in his restraining order request, and I want to read you his actual words here because they matter. While I had initially hoped that respondents' aberrant behavior would subside and that the situation would improve, that has not occurred despite my efforts to maintain peace. As a result of respondents' continued harassment and volatility, I remain in fear of my safety and well-being. In fear of my safety and well-being. Those are not the words of a reality TV villain running a redemption arc. Those are the words of someone who is scared. Now, here's the thing though, because you know just like I know that Tom Sandoval has not been the most sympathetic figure in the public eye over the past few years. The Scandoval situation, the affair, the way it played out on camera and off. The internet essentially decided who Tom Sandoval was as a person and spent a long time making that verdict stick. And I'm not here to relitigate any of that. What happened between Tom and Ariana and Rachel Leviss is its own story with its own moral weight, and people have their feelings about it, and those feelings are valid. But here's what I need you to consider, because this is the part nobody talks about. The fact that someone is a deeply imperfect person does not mean they cannot also be a victim. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. And when we decide as a public that someone is the villain in their own story, we create a very convenient cover for anyone who wants to harm them. Because who's going to believe him? Who's going to rush to his defense? Who's going to take his side? The cultural narrative was already written, and that makes a person like Tom Sandoval, post-Scandoval, genuinely vulnerable in a way that most people aren't thinking about right now. And I think someone knew that. The AirTag in the car, the hacking of his accounts, the filming during arguments, that's not impulsive. That's not just rage in the moment. That's strategic. Someone gathering footage, someone tracking movements, someone maintaining access to information that could be used. For what? Against whom? And when? The June 3rd incident happened and she was arrested. But Tom still helped with bail. He was still trying to de-escalate. He was still hoping. And while he was hoping, his belongings were sitting in a house he couldn't safely go back to, and attempts to retrieve them were being met with threats. There's a system here. That's the thing I keep coming back to. There's a pattern and a system. And it didn't start on June 3rd, and it didn't end there either. Now, the court has granted Tom a temporary restraining order as of June 25th, 2026. The next hearing is scheduled for July 16th. That's when a judge will decide whether this protection becomes something more permanent. And I want you to pay attention to what comes out between now and that date. Because Victoria has not commented publicly. Her team hasn't responded to E! News. The silence is notable. Not because silence proves anything it doesn't, but because in a media environment where everyone moves fast to control the narrative, staying completely quiet about active court proceedings involving your own arrest is a choice. And choices mean something. What's also notable is who isn't talking about this. Because here's the reality of Tom Sandoval's media situation right now. He doesn't have an army of fans flooding comment sections in his defense. He doesn't have a fan base that's been rallying for his redemption. The same cultural infrastructure that turned Scandoval into a national conversation. The podcasts, the pop culture accounts, the Bravo fan communities. Most of them don't have a vested emotional interest in being sympathetic to Tom right now. And that means there are fewer people asking the hard questions. Fewer people pushing back on the framing. Fewer people reading the actual court documents instead of just the headlines. But you did. You're here. And you're reading them with me right now. He said. Actually, let me rephrase that. Tom didn't just file a restraining order. He filed a declaration, a sworn, signed legal declaration describing what happened to him in his own words with specific dates, specific incidents, specific physical injuries, and specific allegations of ongoing behavior that he says has left him in fear of his safety. That's a very different thing from a celebrity putting out a statement through a publicist. This is a legal document with legal consequences for lying, and the detail in it, May 14th, the specific dimensions of the hole in the door, the bleeding from the ear and neck, the footage he says he captured. That level of specificity is not the hallmark of someone manufacturing a narrative. It reads like someone who was keeping track because they knew they might eventually need it. The reason for that, well, you'll see what I mean when the July 16th hearing happens and more comes out. Because it will come out. These things always do. What I keep returning to is the image of a man barricaded in a bedroom while someone else's father destroys a door to get to him. And then the woman he was living with coming in and hitting him hard enough to make him bleed. And then, and this is the part I genuinely cannot stop thinking about, him helping post bail for both of them afterward. Because he was still hoping, still trying to hold it together, still believing, on some level, that the person he'd chosen was not actually the person he was experiencing. That's not weakness. That's not stupidity. That's what prolonged exposure to a volatile situation does to a person's judgment. You start calibrating your sense of normal to the chaos around you. What should have been a clear sign gets absorbed into the baseline. And you keep adjusting until one day you're sitting in a hotel room alone with no access to your own belongings, and you finally sit down and write a declaration to a court because you're out of other options. Tom Sandoval has been one of the most publicly mocked and condemned figures in reality television over the past couple of years. And I'm not asking you to forget why. I'm asking you to hold that alongside this. A man was tracked. A man was surveilled. A man was physically struck multiple times by the person he was living with. He blood. He filed documents. He's scared. And the people who were loudest about accountability when it involved him as the wrongdoer have been very, very quiet this week. Isn't that something? The same voices that built an entire media moment around holding Tom Sandoval accountable for his choices are largely absent from this story. Where's the outrage now? Where's the community of people demanding that victims be believed? That patterns of abuse be taken seriously, that physical violence be called by its name? Because the answer to that question tells you something. Not about Tom Sandoval. About us. About which victims we decide deserve our attention and which ones we decide have earned whatever they get. And that is a standard that should disturb every single person watching this right now. If we only believe victims when we already like them, then we don't actually believe victims. We believe in convenience. We believe in the narrative that was already handed to us. And the narrative that was handed to us about Tom Sandoval is that he's the villain. Full stop. No complexity. No nuance. No room for anything else. But the court documents don't know that narrative. The court documents just have dates and injuries and a temporary restraining order signed on June 25th and a hearing coming on July 16th and a man who says he's still afraid. So here's what I'm asking you to do. Not to forgive Tom Sandoval for anything he's done in his past. Not to take sides in a situation where there are still things we don't know. But to watch this. To keep watching. To not let this get buried under the next cycle of celebrity distraction while real documents with real allegations sit in a courthouse waiting for a judge to read them. Because the machine that decides whose story matters and whose story gets buried, that machine doesn't stop running just because you figured out it exists. It keeps going. And the only thing that slows it down is people like you refusing to look away. So tell me something. If this had been anyone other than Tom Sandoval, would this story already be everywhere? Would it be leading every entertainment segment? Would the conversation be different? Because I think you know the answer. I think you knew the answer before I even asked. And that answer should make every one of us angry.